Hey, what's up, everybody? Sorry, took me a little bit longer to get started this morning, so I apologize for everybody. But I'm here, better late than never. This is Showtime on Phantom, as part of the New World Order of Sports Media. I am Ari Temkin, your humble host, looking a bit like the Terminator today. So let's see if we can get that sorted out. But thank you all for being a part of today's show, as a lot of you are every day, and I appreciate everybody coming back time and time again every day to stream this with us. If you're new to the program, thank you for joining us, and appreciate you being a part of today's show. Hopefully you'll make this an everyday thing. It's amazing how you test something and it looks good, and then I'll just sit far back. That looks like it works pretty well when I just sit back here. G. Garcia, John Mizak, Chris Bennett, Johnny and Meg, Tony Graham, Chris Bennett, all saying hello to all you. Thank you for the very nice and warm welcomings. Let me go ahead and just share this if you wouldn't mind. Everybody, while I do that, do the same if you wouldn't mind as well. I'm Ari Temkin. I host the Cowboys pre- and post-game show on 105.3 The Fan here in Dallas, the Dallas Cowboys radio network. And I stream every day at noon Central to give you the latest on the Dallas Cowboys as I see it. This is, if this is your first time, an interactive show. So interact. Tell me what you want to know. Whatever it is you want to know about the Dallas Cowboys, I am here to tell you what I think, and listen to what you think, all that good stuff. So, don't be a stranger. Participate in the back and forth discussion, and we'll go from there. All right. A shout out to our partners here at Phantom. As I'm able to broadcast across multiple platforms and multiple channels thanks to our great partners here at Phantom. One of them is the Dallas Cowboys America's Team page. Salute to all you great folks watching over there, including Johnny Aguilar, Doris Coro, Curtis Starks, Anita Mays, Laura Jones. They all say hello. Hello, everybody. I just mentioned Cody Arnold says the safety situation is horrible. This isn't going to cut it this season. And now Frazier could miss a month to a month and a half. They better do something besides finding all these guys, but no one else wants. Yes, I'll get to the safety problems. In fact, I'm going to write that down, Cody. I'll write even your name down as well so that I don't forget. Cody Arnold, safeties. Instead of just aimlessly wandering, I'm going to try to organize this in some ways, but keep those questions coming, and I'm going to get to all of them. Also broadcasting live across the YouTube platform with Law Nation's 2.0 page. Shout out to Law Nation. Lawrence Thomas does fantastic work across YouTube and across Facebook. Jay Navarro says, hey, Ari. Hey, Jay. Neil Favre says, what's up? Great seeing Beasley out there again. Yeah, Beasley was out there last night. Keith Price says, hey, from Oklahoma, the Dron Johnson signing. What does this do to Earl Thomas? So the two safeties they signed, Dominique Sanders and Dron Johnson, they're camp bodies. They're literally nothing more than that. Unless something crazy happened, which is they made the roster because they outperformed expectations. But, Dron Johnson's a veteran. He's been around. He played with Seattle, and there's a familiarity there with Chris Richard. At this point, they just needed those guys to get snaps. I don't see anybody that thinks that these guys that were available at this juncture are going to make an impact. Like that's just not going to happen. It's a very small percentage chance that something like that happens. Janiqua Russell on the Law Nation 2.0 YouTube page says, hey, Ari, question, why haven't we picked up George Iloka? Well, because he got signed by the Vikings, and the Cowboys didn't really make Iloka a priority. The Cowboys are fine at strong safety. So that's what Iloka was, basically. Maybe they could have looked at playing him at free safety, but, Iloka is a strong safety. So, they have Heath, they have Frazier, they're set at strong safety. It's the need that they have at center field, basically, at free safety. Eric Kashani says, yes, please let's stick with impact players that have a real shot. Cowboys X Factor says he went to the Vikings. It's too late now. There's a familiarity with Mike Zimmer, the former Cowboys defensive coordinator, who is now the Vikings head coach. Of course, he was in Cincinnati for a long time as the defensive coordinator there before coming the Vikings head coach. So he was with George Iloka. So, so that's just that. They didn't go after Iloka. They weren't really interested in him. You can make a pretty credible argument that there was a period throughout the entire. Here's the thing. The Cowboys had an entire offseason to address the needed safety. They had an entire offseason. This isn't just like, well, they have all these injuries and suddenly this has become a problem. This was a problem. It was a problem. It stays a problem. It's a problem. It's not something that the Cowboys prioritized this offseason. So, I think, what does that say? That says that the Cowboys don't necessarily view it as a major issue, and I think they're wrong. But the Cowboys don't view the problems they have at safety as being actual problems. I think they're wrong. The Cowboys don't. They didn't address it at all in the offseason. They didn't spend any picks in the draft on the safety position. They didn't invest any money in free agency on the safety position. They entertained none of these guys, Tyrann Mathieu, Eric Reed, George Aloka, Kenny Vaccaro, Trey Boston. They have entertained the notion of signing none of those guys. That I didn't even mention any of the other potential safeties that were on the market. I mean, they literally did the bare minimum, and you could probably argue they did less than the bare minimum to try to solidify the safety position this offseason through free agency and through the draft. They didn't put any draft capital whatsoever into the safety position, and then on top of that, they moved. The reason I say they might have even done less than the bare minimum was because they moved Byron Jones from safety to corner. Now again, I think that was the right move, but I mean they just have, either they have some sort of grand master plan when it comes to Earl Thomas, or basically they don't need credible safeties. But this isn't new because of the Xavier Woods injury. The safety position was always a concern for this team. And, maybe now it's just bubbling to the surface because we're closer and closer to the season, and now there's one injury that completely affects the dynamic of this roster. But, like, if you live in the next man up world, then they should have been thinking beyond Xavier Woods, but they didn't. Eric Koscielny says, what's the issue with getting safeties? It's been an issue for many, many seasons. Well, I think, a part of it is they don't feel like it's a prioritized position. Does this work? Is this making it better? Maybe I need less light. Is that the problem here? Less light? I don't know. It's annoying me because it's inconsistent every day, but I digress. This is what it's like to produce a show without much, like I'm used to just turning on a microphone and talking into it and not being able to being asked to do anything other than that. So like having to do these visual elements with the green screen and lighting, it's foreign to me, and I'm basically showing how stupid and little I know about it, but just bear with me. So, I mean, the reason, Eric, that they haven't really prioritized the safety position is because they don't think it's a position to be prioritized. And certainly you can look across the NFL, and it certainly seems like a position that's been devalued to a certain degree. But I mean, it's almost as if the Cowboys they're not only devaluing it, they're basically like completely eschewing it. I don't even know if they want to even line up anybody at safety at this point. John and Meg says we have one of the best front sevens in the league, and without an ET type impact player, we'll get burned. Yeah, I mean, you need safeties in order to make sure that you don't get beat deep. Again, I agree with everybody. I found it odd this entire offseason they did nothing to address the position. I went on the show, on the stream, and, thought, well, maybe this all points to them trying to, still bringing in Earl Thomas, because it's like they have that spot open for him, and they've done nothing. Again, I brought this, it was on a podcast I did on the Cowboys beat, it was on a stream I did. Like, it seems like they're going after Earl Thomas because there's really no other explanation for what they've done at the safety position this offseason. And it's hard to believe that it's not something that's going to bite them in the rear end. Let's see here. Cody Arnold says the thing about the safety situation is that it's been a problem for years. Jerry just keeps nickel and diming this position and doesn't want to pay anyone. He keeps thinking late round picks and other teams' cuts are going to get it done. They've been plenty of options out there year after year. I just don't understand. Well, look, Jerry's not nickel and diming anybody. Jerry doesn't nickel and dime. In fact, a lot of Cowboys fans complained about Jerry not nickeling and diming and that he spent too much money and put them in salary cap hell. So, this is part of the new Stephen Jones era of thrifty spending, and the Cowboys don't really sign anybody in free agency. It's not just safeties. They're not, they're looking to shop at the bargain bin with. It's, it's all positions. And, again, I think the safety position in particular has been devalued around the NFL. I don't see the devaluation of the position to the effect to the degree the Cowboys have taken it. But, it's what they've decided to do. It's not a smart move. They should have put more assets and resources into the safety position. But guys, this kind of goes back to what we talked about yesterday, which is this sort of like there's still a bigger problem here with the Cowboys, and it's the offensive line, and that's a big part of what I wanted to get into today. There we go. Should the Cowboys sit main starters versus Arizona? So, I was at practice last night at the Star in Frisco. If you missed last night's stream, well, where were you? Eric Kashani was upset with me. He thought I was just repeating everything that was on the Showtime yesterday. But, Eric, that was not true. I had some new stuff in there, including my interview with Lance Lenore. I didn't play the interview, but I talked about things that he talked about in the interview. But there was a reason one of the major talking points from practice, and Eric Kashani, we gave 29 to Johnson. That's a bad sign. Yeah, and that was something else, Eric, that I talked about yesterday during the evening stream post-practice. So there you go. There was multiple things that were new as part of the afternoon session. What do you want from me, Eric? I answer the questions, okay? If people continue to ask me about Rico, I'm going to continue to answer them, despite how ridiculous it sounds as I continue to repeat these same things over and over again. But what do you want? What do you want from me? I'm only a man, okay? I'm not mistake-free. One of the main talking points for practice yesterday was, so first off, Jerry Jones went on 105.3 The Fan, the Sean and RJ show, and mentioned that he felt the need for the Cowboys to not, because they weren't going to have Zach Martin, Travis Frederick available for preseason week 3, that he thought, well, what's the point then in playing Dak or Zeke or Tyron Smith for that matter? So Jerry was under the assumption that, if you're not going to be playing with your main guys, you're putting your other players at risk for injury, it's a fair point. And I think it's, I think it's an important point. And by the way, I'm checking in Robert Holm and Eric Kashani also on the Law Nation page. I'm checking it over there too. So I'll get to your comments in a moment. I just wanted to address this real quickly. So everybody bear with me if you're posting comments. Keep those coming. Hit the share button. If you're watching this on YouTube, give me the thumbs up. All that great stuff. Would appreciate that very much so. So Jerry made those comments on the Fan, basically that he felt like if Travis Frederick and Zach Martin are going to play, then why put the other guys at injury risk, which I think is a fair point. Jason Garrett yesterday during his press conference before practice basically, and Jerry said, by the way, it's not my decision, it's Jason's decision. That's just the way I feel about it. And I think Jason's answer or input on that was, that's good input, and it's certainly something we're weighing. We're trying to figure that out. And no worries, Eric. I'm just joking with you, brother. But I think most people's sentiment would be consistent with that. I disagree with it because here's the thing. So Travis Frederick is dealing with issues from repeated stingers. He saw a doctor in L.A. in Southern California. Everything, according to Travis, came back fine. He's now seeking second and third opinions in Dallas. What we now found out, according to sources via multiple outlets, is that he's trying to figure out if rest is okay at this point or if he needs to have surgery. Here's the thing. Travis Frederick's going to need to have surgery. Whether it's now, whether it's this offseason, whether it's after his career is over. But he's going to have surgery to repair these issues that he's having. Particular with, I'm guessing we're talking about herniated discs, I think is what we're talking about here, which are causing the nerve issues that he's having in his neck and back. So, if Zach Martin has a bone bruise in his knee. The reason I think it's important to play Dak Prescott, Zeke Elliott, and Tyron Smith with the other guys in week 3 of the preseason is because there's a greater than 1% chance that they're going to have to play games this year without Travis Frederick and Zach Martin. And maybe that's not a reality that people want to address, but it's a reality nonetheless. And it's an important reality to address and to face. So wouldn't it be in the best interest of the Cowboys to get reps with Kadeem Edwards at right guard, with Joe Looney at center? If the notion is the Cowboys are going to be fine and able to play the majority of the season with Zach Martin and Travis Frederick, then there's no reason to risk it with their main starters by putting them at greater injury risk and putting them out there in front of an offensive line that's not as great as Zach Martin and Travis Frederick. I get that, but the problem is there's a pretty good chance, I wouldn't say a good chance, but a chance nonetheless, And maybe there is a pretty good chance that they're going to have to play games this year without those guys. So wouldn't it be better for them to get a look with that line, with Dak, with Zeke in the preseason, so that once the regular season comes around and they're faced with a situation like that, they've had a familiarity with it in some capacity? I mean, you have to weigh probability of Martin playing 16 games, Frederick playing 16 games, versus probability of Dak sustaining an injury playing behind that line. G. Garcia says, what's that recovery time on that surgery? I'm not sure. It's a good question, though. But when I spoke with a doctor who knows the situation pretty well, he basically said this is a surgery he can either have now after the season or after his career is over. Kind of just depends on pain management and how much it worsens over time, kind of thing. I think it's at a point right now where he can wait. I mean, but obviously, can you wait like until the end of your career? Can you wait till the end of the season? Is sort of the thing. But I just, again, if this idea here is, well, don't play Dak against Arizona in their dress rehearsal on Sunday night. Don't play Zeke in their dress rehearsal against Arizona on Sunday night. Don't put these guys at a heightened risk for injury because they're playing behind an offensive line that is not their starting core. It's a very real possibility that it could be at some point this year. And so, again, you have to weigh the probability of those guys sustaining an injury playing behind that line in a preseason game versus needing some semblance and baseline of familiarity with those guys. That's why I think it's probably important for those guys to be playing week 3 of the preseason, because I'm not convinced that Travis Frederick and Zach Martin are going to be healthy enough to play in 16 games this season, which sucks. Because we haven't even mentioned Tyron Smith, who has a bad back, who all offseason I'm not convinced he could be able to play, he'll be able healthy enough to play at 16 games. But if they're not, you have to know what you have. And that's the problem that I have with the Cowboys resting those guys is it seems like it's irresponsible relative to the reality that could be facing them at some point this year. What do you guys all think? Do you still think, based on what I've just presented to you, that the Cowboys should continue to sit their starters? And again, my guess is that is what will happen. I don't think Dak Prescott will start Sunday night against Arizona. I don't think Zeke Elliott will play Sunday night against Arizona. I don't think Tyron Smith will play Sunday night against Arizona. I think they're going to go, Cooper Rush, and they're going to get Chaz Green starting at left tackle, and Kadeem Edwards at right guard, and Joe Looney at center, and maybe Connor Williams and Lyle Collins on the right side. So you have your starters there, but resting everybody else. John and Meg says D. Ware played with Stinger's last few years of his career, and he was still a force. True. I mean, and I'm not suggesting that Travis Frederick can't or won't. I'm just simply suggesting, these things are out there. To say, to not be thinking about playing without them is irresponsible. It puts the Cowboys in the position that they seem to be in every year, which is, woe is us. Well, these injuries, what are we supposed to do without these guys? And it's like, well, you have to when you have a non-zero chance of getting injuries to these guys, because you already have now pre-existing conditions to these guys, you have to look at the reality that faces you, even if it's not the actual immediate reality. And to not do that is irresponsible of the reality of this situation. Let's see here. What's everybody else saying? Across the Law Nation Facebook page, Robert Holm says, I have a good feeling that we'll have ET, or after a 4th preseason, so Seattle can get all the fine money. I'm not going to pretend to know what's going on with this Earl Thomas situation. I don't know whether or not the Cowboys have offered up a 2nd-round pick. I don't know whether or not the Seattle is willing to give a 2nd-round pick for Earl Thomas. I don't know. I don't know what the motivation is behind Seattle. I don't know how aggressively the Cowboys have pursued Earl Thomas, especially within the last month. I'd like to think that it's been pretty aggressive, but I'm not certain of that. And I would think even more so now, the leverage has sort of been removed from the side of the Cowboys, because now it looks like they're in greater need for Earl Thomas. All right, check it back in on the Law Nation 2.0 Facebook or YouTube page. Let's see here. David Short says, Dak's not always going to play behind a completely healthy line. He's got to be ready now for that possibility. The OC has to adjust the game plan accordingly. Agreed. The idea, again, that, we don't want to put Dak at a greater risk for injury. It's but you've got your starting right guard has a bone bruise starting the season, and you're not really sure if Travis Frederick needs rest or surgery. Like, it's one thing to say we don't want Zach Martin and Travis Frederick to play. There's no lingering issues. It's one thing to say that. It's another thing to have actual injuries that these guys are facing and still be like, well, we don't want to put those guys at again. It's to me, it's important to play those guys because there needs to be some semblance of familiarity because I don't know what the percentage chance is, but there's a chance that he's going to have to play snaps and games this year without those guys. And for them to not plan like that is everything they've been the last few years. And every excuse they have when they have to play games without their best players. Joe Deasy says, just go ask Jerry what's going on. Use your leverage, Ari Temkin. What do you mean? Well, yeah, the Cowboys don't have much leverage when it comes to the Earl Thomas situation at this point, so that's why. And they have even less leverage now because they have a need at safety because of the injury to Xavier Woods. That's not necessarily a point that Jerry Jones is comfortable with negotiating, right? Jerry Jones is used to negotiating from a point of leverage. Chris Shaw says, I'd give Dak one drive, score or no score. One drive, regardless of the outcome. I'd be fine with that. Typically you play your starters at least a half of football in the third preseason game. I think they played them a half last week. So I don't know that you have to go as far as playing them a half, but I just think the notion that they shouldn't play them because they're unfamiliar playing the head offensive line is completely disingenuous to the reality facing the Cowboys this year, which is they could be playing significant games, snaps, hopefully not, but they could very realistically be playing games without their main guys along their offensive line. Travis Frederick and Zach Martin. So see what it's like with Kadeem Edwards and Joe Looney. Because if it's not, especially with Kadeem Edwards, I think Looney's had a good camp. He's looked good, but from what we've heard from Brian Broaddus and other people close to the situation, Kadeem Edwards needs to prove his spot on this roster, and if not, they need to go find someone else that might end up being cut, after the fourth preseason game. Let's see here. What if we veer a second and a sixth? You're talking offer. Honcho Sacktown Cowboy says, what if we offer a second and a sixth? I would think, a second alone would get it done. It certainly, I think, was the case during the draft when the Cowboys earmarked a second-round pick for Earl Thomas but then pulled it back because they wanted to take Connor Williams. I don't think a sixth is going to push them over the top. By the way, thank you all for watching this, streaming this live on Facebook and on YouTube, of course, across the Twitter platform as well, and on Twitch. I'm Ari Temkin from 105.3 The Fan and the Dallas Cowboys pre- and post-game show. By the way, if you'd like to come see the Cowboys in action this Sunday night, go to SeatGeek.com. Make sure to use promo code PHANTOM, F-A-N-T-O-M. If you use promo code PHANTOM at SeatGeek, you're going to get $20 off your first order. So if you want to buy tickets to see Cowboys and Cardinals this Sunday night from AT&T Stadium, maybe you'll see Dak Prescott and Zeke Elliott, maybe you won't. But if you want to get an up-close and look at the Dallas Cowboys in their dress rehearsal before the regular season, get into AT&T Stadium for easily the cheapest ticket you're going to get the entire rest of this season, and get $20 off your tickets, go to SeatGeek.com, use promo code PHANTOM, F-A-N-T-O-M. Use that promo code, you're going to get $20 off your first order. So do that if you want to go see the game or any other game, no matter where you are. All right, Michael Ruff says, sign Jari Evans. It's 35. He could be solid depth. He has to face it. Sure. Again, I think the Cowboys are at a point where, we look at their 53 and we're looking at the guys on the 90, on their current roster right now. They're going to make up their 53. I don't know that that's necessarily all true. They could potentially sign safeties from guys that are going to get cut when cut downs happen. They could also sign offensive linemen. So I think it's all on the table there. Chris Shaw says, is Marcus Martin done for the year? Yes. Yeah, so far, Marcus Martin and Jamil Showers are the two players, I believe, the only two players the Cowboys have put on IR. All right, let's see here. All right, so I've made my case for why the Cowboys should not be sitting their main guys versus Arizona. What about Jason Garrett, everybody? How does everybody feel about Jason Garrett? Everybody ready for him to be gone? Um, let's see here. Checking back in on the Dallas Cowboys America's team page. Curtis Stark says, how serious are the Joneses about bringing another championship to Dallas? As we fans have been dry way too long. I think they're serious about it. I don't know. I mean, I think all teams want to win for the most part. Look, the Cowboys for a long time were irresponsible in the way that they spent money, and because of it, they were locked in salary cap hell. So they overcorrected. People complained about their, how bad they were at spending money, and because of that, now they don't spend any money basically. And Brandon Carr, as I brought up last night, was basically the last guy they've gone out in free agency and put a lot of money into, and that didn't even exactly work out. So I do think that the Cowboys' approach right now in building through the draft, in in prioritizing draft picks, and then and they've done exceedingly well at it. I mean, they've been really, really good in the draft in the last decade. And I do think though that there's got to be a happy medium between, like, you want to fill all your holes for the draft, but that's not realistic. You're not going to fulfill all your holes for the draft, so you have to supplement the holes you're not able to fill through free agency. And I don't know if the Cowboys are doing that. Well, I do know they're not doing it. Kevin Bloodsoe says, "Why is Chaz Green still on a roster? Must have something on Jerry. LOL." Well, because they've got 90 spots, and they don't need to cut it down to 53 until their final preseason game. Chaz Green's not going to make this team, so I mean, it doesn't really matter at this point. He's just there to fill space, literally. Let's see here. Andrew Blanding says, "I think we should give Zeke some reps in preseason. Game practice is not like game situations, right? And they're not really hitting him. I mean, the Cowboys are practicing scared. They're playing scared. The second preseason game has them scared. They practiced yesterday and Monday without pads on, which is not normal during training camp, preseason weeks. It might be normal during a regular season week of practices to have a couple of days of unpadded, non-padded practices, but for them to go for the first 2 days, after this preseason, I mean, they're scared. They're scared of injuries, and I get it, but I get why they're scared. I don't think it's the right approach, though. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a fair point Andrew Blanding brings up. That Zeke is, needs to be acclimated to the speed of the game. And look, this is a tired old argument when it comes to should they play in the preseason? Do they need to get those reps? And it's an argument that will always be around. And there's no right answer to the argument. That's why it's an argument that's always around. I think there's some guys, NFL players will tell you. What's funny? They'll tell you both things. Like Sean Lee has said, yeah, I mean, I need the reps. I want as many reps as I can get because the speed, you need to get caught up in the speed of the game. But he's playing, right? Like, he played in preseason week 2, and he was probably going to play in preseason week 3. So the guys that are playing are going to tell you that it's important to get those reps because you need the reps in game speed. But the guys who aren't playing will tell you, it's not that big of a deal. No, I don't need to be playing. The speed. It's funny because you'll have it kind of both ways, and whichever guy you interview on the team will give you the answer that satisfies his current status. So, do they need game speed? Do they need to be acclimated to it? I don't know. Quite frankly, I don't know. Because, again, you'll hear both answers to it. I do think, though, that what's more important here is it's not the game speed. It might be the familiarity of schedule. When you look at professional athletes, they're creatures of habit. They have schedules. Everything's regimented, and you're at this place at this time, and you've got to do this at this time, and their days are laid out. There's not much free time. It's designed that way. So the reason I think that preseason games are important is because of that. It gives you that. It gives you that. The same timeline. It gets and it gets you into the groove of and the familiarity of being within a season. And it's not just like, well, the game time's at this time, so show up to the state. Like, it's all the things that go into playing and getting yourself ready to play for an NFL game. All those components, like those are the things that you want the players to get to familiarize themselves with. That's what's important here. All right. So I see people addressing the question that I have across the bottom of my screen here. Thank you all for participating in this activity. So Jason Garrett's future with the Cowboys, what do y'all think it is? Let's see here. Cody Arnold says Jason Garrett, Jeff Fisher, even tie. I agree. Keith Price says, who would Dallas be looking at to replace Jason Garrett? Cody Arnold says Cower. Cody, what year? What year is it? Cower? Bill Cower has been an NFL coach in like 2 decades. Bill Cower he's gone, long gone. The two guys that I would be looking at if I were the Cowboys would be, I like Lincoln Riley. The NFL seems to be skewing more towards Lincoln Riley coaches, which are young, creative offensive minds. Chris Richard. That's the small list for me would be Chris Richard and Lincoln Riley, because Chris Richard has been, he's looked very much the part of Dallas Cowboys head coach throughout training camp. He is, he's seemingly a fan favorite and a media darling. So, I mean, they're not going to fire Jason Garrett today, but if they did, I think the short list would be potentially Lincoln Riley and Chris Richard. Let's see here. Cody Kaufman says Jason Garrett's a puppet. Jerry Jones, why would he even think about getting rid of him? LOL. Well, because, I think at some point the morale of the fan base is important here. And, as if the entire fan base hasn't turned against Jason Garrett, if they have another losing season, it will. And I don't think Jason can survive that. JP Trimmer says, I kind of see the point about not wanting to play starters due to the way their second and third unit is playing. Is performing, but I still think they need game reps. Yeah, and JP must have missed when I was talking about earlier. Like, there's a very real possibility that those second stringers across their offensive line are going to be playing first string reps during regular season games relative to, Zach Martin and Travis Frederick's health. So, I think it's important for that too. Let's see here. Sean Moore says Jason's a mediocre head coach. He already had enough shots to prove otherwise. It's just up to the brass to figure that out. Yeah. I think Jason Garrett is like the majority of NFL head coaches, which is just down the line, by the book, as they call it, right? He's kicking field goals on fourth down in the red zone or, in the opponent's side of the 50. He's not much of an outside-the-box thinker. He's not, implementing advanced analytics in any capacity whatsoever to guide playmaking and to guide scheming and game planning. And, I think the majority of NFL head coaches are just conservative by the book because it keeps them employed. If you go for it a lot on fourth down and you miss, you give the front office more of a reason to fire you. And so I think, but the more the less chances you take, the more by the book you are, the more average you are, the more likely you are to keep a job. And not only that, but even if you get fired, to stay, to be able to get employment again. Jeff Fisher, John Fox, the NFL's, and I know those guys are starting to be outdated, but the NFL's littered with these kinds of coaches. So I think Garrett fits that mold. Now, the reality of it is the Cowboys have enough talent on this roster to win 10 games. And John and Meg says Garrett is safe if we win 10 plus games. I think Jason Garrett's safe if the Cowboys make the playoffs. If that's 10-6 and make the playoffs, then that's what it is. If it's 10-6 and miss the playoffs, then it's a different story. But that's a rarity. It's a rarity that a coach would go 10-6 in the NFL and miss the playoffs. But I think they make the playoffs and Garrett's going to be safe. I think if they don't make the playoffs, Jason Garrett's not safe. And people that think otherwise, because of what Jerry Jones has said prior to the season, like I don't think Jason can survive another not making the playoff season, regardless of injuries or anything else. And quite frankly, if the Cowboys do in fact miss the playoffs and they don't fire Jason Garrett because of injuries or whatever issues they want to overlook, then you as a fan of the Dallas Cowboys should be demanding more. You can't talk about next man up and then complain about injuries, which is all Jason Garrett does. Well, I don't want to make excuses, but let me just make an excuse here and then talk about the injury and how that affected the outcome of the season. You can't say we're a next man up team, and then when an injury happens and you miss the playoffs because of the injury, be like, well, look at those injuries we had, which is something the Cowboys do quite often. So, man, that's annoying when that light kind of shines in here and then you can see the Terminator thing on my face. So, I think Jason Garrett projects the aura of the coach he'd like to be. He has a certain style that he's trying to play with and coach with. It's clear it's a style conducive to young football players. I think they built their roster accordingly. I don't think they built the roster this offseason to be Dak friendly. I think they built the roster this offseason to be Garrett friendly, which is young. He seems more conducive to being a college coach. Rah-rah, great motivator, not great with X's and O's, and not good at game planning and not good at evolving. That's a fatal flaw. It can get you to the playoffs. It's not getting you far in the playoffs, though. It's very difficult to win a Super Bowl without a coach that can make the necessary changes within a game and over the course of a few games. The best coaches win Super Bowls because they can evolve and change their game plan up, and they do that over the course of a game and over the course of multiple games. And that's, like, especially in the playoffs. And that's probably a big reason why the Cowboys haven't had as much success in the playoffs during the Jason Garrett era. Sean Moore says, Linehan's even worse in my opinion. How do you have first and goal on the 2 with this line and Zeke? Yeah, no, I agree. I'm not a big fan of Jason Garrett or Scott Linehan. But they say they're going to be more creative. They say they're going to be different this year, so we'll see. We'll wait and see. And Sean Moore hit the nail on the head right there. Like, that's if you're a Cowboys fan that doesn't like Jason Garrett, which I think at this point is a lot of Cowboys fans, then the silver lining to the season is either you're going to make the team, you're going to make the playoffs, or you're not, and Garrett's going to lose his job. So it's kind of a win-win both ways, right? Either the Cowboys win, they make the playoffs, and that's fantastic because you're a Cowboys fan. You want to see them do well, or they don't, and Jason Garrett loses his job. And believe me, I don't think that Jason Garrett keeps his job if they miss the playoffs, regardless of what Jerry Jones says. So that's just my line of thinking on it. I'm Ari Temkin. You can check me out on the pre- and post-game show along 105 through the Fan and the Dallas Cowboys radio network. Rob Garcia says, everything you're saying is right on. Appreciate you saying that. Make sure if this is your first time checking out my stream, make sure to check out every day at noon, right here, noon central, right here on Phantom, across multiple platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. Phantom is the new world order of sports media. We are delivering live sports content to the digital spaces that you already are. You're on Facebook, you're on YouTube, you're on Twitter, you're on Twitch. Hopefully, you're on one of them. And so we're going to bring you live sports and live sports content. That's what we're doing here. So make sure to check out the page. If you're watching this on the Law Nation 2.0 YouTube page, make sure to go check out the Phantom page and hit the subscribe button there. Help us grow over there. And then, of course, Facebook.com/Watch Phantom. And also make sure to check out our sponsors, because they are what helping us keep the lights on here at Phantom. BetDSI. You see them across the screen. It's just a game until you bet. Use promo code Phantom, and BetDSI is going to match whatever your initial deposit is 100% up to $2,500. So you go to BetDSI.com. You want to take the over on 8.5 wins for the Cowboys this year, or the under on 8.5 wins for the Cowboys this year. Go to BetDSI.com, sign up for an account, and then use promo code Phantom, Phantom, and that will get you 100% back. Whatever your initial deposit is. So, like I did, I went to betdsi.com, made a deposit of $100. Used promo code Phantom. I got $100 to play with then. So I'm taking a lot. I actually bet on the entire NFC East with the $200 that I had at betdsi.com. And just to reiterate, don't get mad at me. This is just what I think. You can think something different. But I have the Eagles over 10.5 and winning this division. The Cowboys making the playoffs at 10-6, over 8.5 wins, second place in this division, over 8.5. I have the Giants over 7 wins, but not making the playoffs, third place in this division. And then I have the Redskins going under 6.5 wins as fourth place and last in this division. All right, again, thank you everybody for joining us on this stream. I'll be back again tomorrow, noon central for Showtime. Noon o'clock with TJ Carpenter is coming up next, so make sure to stay tuned for that across the Phantom platform. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to Sean Moore. Thank you to Joe Deasy. Thank you to Chris Bennett. Thank you to Neil Favre and Cody Arnold and Robert Holm and Curtis Starks and Eric Kushaney and all you great Keith Price and all you great folks who comment and join and share every single day. Thank you.